I gave them everything. A 3-story house with marble floors, air conditioning in every room, a car for her mother. I thought I was building our future. But 6 months after the house was finished, her brother changed the locks while I was at the market. Patricia wouldn't answer my calls. Her family said I was never part of the plan. I'm Ronald. I'm 66 years old, and I just learned the most expensive lesson of my life. This is how I lost everything in the Philippines. The sand was still warm under my feet. The sun was setting over Bacolod, painting the sky orange and pink. Patricia sat beside me on that beach, her hand in mine, and for the first time in 8 years, I felt like I mattered again. "This is perfect," she said, squeezing my fingers. "Just you and me. No stress, no problems." I looked at her face, the way the light caught her eyes, and something in my chest unlocked. Something I thought had died with my wife. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," I told her. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "You deserve to feel this way, Ronald. You deserve to be happy." I believed her. God help me. I believed every word. My life in Houston had become a waiting room. That's the only way I can describe it. After Sandra died, the house felt too big, too quiet. My kids called on birthdays and holidays, but they had their own lives, their own families. I was just the old man who lived alone and watched too much TV. Retirement was supposed to be freedom, but it felt like being forgotten. I'd wake up, make coffee, sit on the porch, and wonder what the point was. Then I met Patricia on a dating app. I almost didn't message her. 30 years old, beautiful, living in the Philippines. Why would she want to talk to me? But I did, and she responded, not with short answers or obvious lies. She asked about my life, my job, what I missed about Sandra, what I was afraid of. "I'm afraid I'll die and no one will notice for days," I told her one night. She wrote back immediately, "I would notice, Ronald. I already notice you now." 6 months of messages turned into video calls. Video calls turned into plans. When I flew to Manila, then took a smaller plane to Bacolod, my hands were shaking. What if she wasn't real? What if this was all some elaborate scam? But when I walked out of that airport, she was there, holding a sign with my name, smiling like I was the only person in the world. "Ronald." She ran to me, threw her arms around my neck. I'm 6'2" and she barely came up to my chest, but in that moment, I felt small in the best way. Held, wanted. She took my bag. "Come on, I want you to meet my family. They're so excited." I followed her to a jeepney, squeezing into the crowded seat beside her, and I thought, this is it. This is what I've been missing. Her family lived an hour outside the city, down a dirt road that turned to mud when it rained. The house was small, wooden. The roof leaked in 2 places. I could hear it dripping into buckets inside. Patricia's mother, Erlinda, greeted me at the door. "Welcome, welcome," she said, taking my hand in both of hers. She was maybe 50, but she looked older, tired. Her brother June stood in the corner, arms crossed, watching me. He nodded once, didn't smile. Patricia's sister Marjorie sat on a worn couch, 2 small kids climbing on her lap. "This is my family," Patricia said, her voice soft, proud. I looked around the cramped space, the peeling paint, the single fan trying to move the hot air. 5 people lived here, in 2 rooms. "It's nice to meet you all," I said. Erlinda smiled, but her eyes didn't. She looked at Patricia, then back at me, like she was measuring something. That night, Patricia cooked dinner. Rice, chicken adobo, vegetables I didn't recognize. We ate on mismatched plates, sitting close together because there wasn't much space. June barely spoke, just ate and watched me. "How long are you staying?" he finally asked. 2 weeks, I said. "Maybe longer if things go well." Patricia touched my arm. "I hope it's longer." The next few days were perfect. Patricia took me to markets, to churches, to hidden beaches where we were the only people for miles. She introduced me to her friends, her cousins, her neighbors. Everyone was kind. Everyone smiled. But I noticed something. Whenever we were alone, Patricia would get quiet. Sad. What's wrong? I asked her one night. We were lying in bed in the small hotel I'd rented. She turned away from me. It's nothing. Patricia, talk to me. She was quiet for a long time. Then she started crying. Soft at first, then harder. I sat up, put my hand on her back. Hey, what is it? She wiped her face. I hate seeing them live like that. Your family? She nodded. I work so hard, Ronald. I send money every month. But it's never enough. The roof still leaks. There's never enough food. My sister can't afford to send her kids to a good school. Her voice broke. I feel like I'm failing them. I didn't think. I just spoke. What if I helped? She turned to look at me. What? What if I helped? What if we built them something better? Her eyes went wide. Ronald, no. That's too much. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. I took her hands. Patricia, I have money sitting in a bank in Houston doing nothing. My Social Security comes every month. I'm alone. I don't need much. But you, your family, you need this. She was crying again, but different now. You would do that? For my family? For you? I said. For us. She kissed me then, hard and desperate, and I felt like a king, like a man with a purpose. I love you, Ronald, she whispered. I love you so much. The next morning, I told her Linda and June. We were sitting outside, drinking instant coffee. I want to help, I said. I want to build you a new house. Something better. Something your family deserves. Her Linda's face lit up. Ronald, that's too generous. It's not too much, I said. It's the right thing to do. June didn't say anything, just stared at me with those dark, unreadable eyes. Finally he nodded. Okay. That was it. Just okay. No thank you. No smile. I looked at Patricia. She was beaming. This is going to change everything, she said. I believed her. I still don't know if she believed herself. 2 weeks later, I was back in Houston, wiring $85,000 to Patricia's account. It felt surreal, watching that number disappear from my retirement fund. But Patricia sent me photos every day. The land they'd bought, the cleared lot, the foundation being poured. This is really happening, she texted. Thank you, Ronald. Thank you for believing in us. I printed out one of the photos and put it on my fridge. Me and Patricia, standing in front of a pile of dirt and wooden stakes. She was smiling. I was smiling. We looked like a couple building a future. I flew back to Bacolod 3 months later. Patricia picked me up at the airport again, but this time she brought her cousin Ronald. He's the contractor, she explained. Ronald was maybe 35, with a wide smile and a firm handshake. Ronald, sir, it's an honor. Patricia has told me so much about you. We drove to the site. The foundation was done. The walls were going up. It was bigger than I expected. This is a 3-story house, I said, looking at the plans Ronald had spread out on a makeshift table. Yes, sir. You said you wanted the best for the family. I did. But this seems like a lot. Patricia touched my arm. Ronald, you said you wanted to take care of us. This is how. My mother needs space. My sister needs space for the kids. June needs his own room. This is what they need. I looked at the plans. Marble floors, tile roof, modern kitchen, 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. How much is this going to cost? Ronald glanced at Patricia. The initial estimate is $120,000, but with materials and labor, probably closer to $150,000. My stomach dropped. I already gave you $85,000. Yes, sir, and we've used it well, but there are always unexpected costs. Foundation issues, permits, labor disputes. Patricia squeezed my arm. Ronald is family, Ronald. He won't cheat us. This is the real cost. I wired another $40,000 the next week, then $5,000 more for permits, then $8,000 for better tiles. The cheaper ones crack in the heat, Patricia explained. Then $12,000 for the kitchen appliances. If we're building a house, we should do it right. I watched my savings shrink, but I also watched the house rise. And every time I started to worry, Patricia would hold me close and say, "This is our future, Ronald. You, me, and my family. We're building something that will last forever." I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. The house took 8 months to finish. I visited 3 times during construction, each time wiring more money. $15,000 for the roof, $10,000 for the air conditioning units, $7,000 for furniture. Patricia always had a reason. Rodell always had an explanation, and I always paid. By the time they handed me the keys, I'd spent over $200,000. But when I saw it, standing tall and white and perfect against the green hills of Bacolod, I felt proud. "We did it," Patricia said, standing beside me. "We really did it." I put my arm around her. "Yeah, we did. But I noticed something." She said "we," but she was looking at her family, not at me. The housewarming party was on a Saturday. Patricia had invited what seemed like half of Bacolod, neighbors, cousins, friends, church members. The house was packed. Music played from speakers I'd paid for. Food covered tables I'd bought. Everyone was laughing, dancing, celebrating. I stood near the kitchen, watching. Erlinda came up to me, took my hand. "Thank you, Ronald. We never dreamed of something like this." "You're welcome," I said. "I'm happy I could help." She nodded, then walked away. That was it. 10 seconds of gratitude for $200,000. June stood on the balcony, giving a speech in Tagalog. I couldn't understand the words, but I understood the tone. Proud, victorious. People cheered. Patricia stood beside him, clapping, smiling. I waited for her to call me over, to introduce me, to say something. She didn't. "Patricia," I said, walking up to her after the speech, "can we take a photo in front of the house?" She glanced at June. "Yeah, sure, in a minute. Just a quick one, you and me." June stepped between us. "Family photo first," he said. His English was better than I thought. "Oh, okay, sure." I stepped back. They gathered on the front steps. Erlinda, June, Marjorie, her kids, Patricia, cousins I'd never met, aunts and uncles, someone's dog. They took photos for 30 minutes. Different poses, different groups. I stood off to the side, holding my phone, waiting. No one called me over. Finally, Patricia came down the steps. "Sorry, Ronald. That took forever. It's okay. Can we take our photo now?" She looked tired. "Let's do it later. I need to check on the food." She walked past me. I stood there, alone, in front of the house I built, and for the first time, I felt like a stranger. That night, after most of the guests had left, I found Patricia in the kitchen. "Can we talk?" She was washing dishes. Didn't look up. "About what?" "About us. About the house." "What about it?" I took a breath. "Where's my name on the deed?" Her hands stopped moving. "What?" "The deed. The ownership papers. Is my name on them?" She turned around, her face blank. "It's in my mother's name." "Why?" "For tax reasons. It's safer that way." My chest felt tight, but I paid for it. Her eyes went hard. "You said it was a gift." I said I wanted to help. "I didn't say I was giving you a $250,000 house. It's not a $250,000. It's close enough." She dried her hands, slowly. "Ronald, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I paid for this house. I should at least be on the deed." "You can't be on the deed. You're not Filipino. Foreigners can't own land here." "Then why didn't you tell me that before I paid for it?" She crossed her arms. "I thought you understood. I thought you were doing this because you love me, because you love my family. I do love you, but I also want to make sure I'm protected." "Protected from what? From me?" Her voice was rising. "You think I'm trying to scam you?" "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." She walked past me, her shoulder hitting mine. Maybe you should go back to your hotel, Ronald. You're ruining the party. I didn't go back to the hotel. I sat outside on the steps, watching the last guests leave. June walked past me, didn't say a word. Marjorie avoided my eyes. Erlinda went inside without a goodbye. Patricia didn't come out. At midnight, I finally stood up and walked down the road. I'd rented a small apartment nearby, just for the 2 weeks I planned to stay. It was tiny, hot. The air conditioner barely worked. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and tried to understand what just happened. I'd given them everything, built them a mansion, and I was the one being told to leave. The next morning, I went back to the house. Patricia was making breakfast. "Hey," I said. She didn't look at me. "Hey, can we talk about last night?" "What's there to talk about?" "Patricia, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You accused me of scamming you. I didn't accuse you of anything. I just asked about the deed." She turned around. "The deed is in my mother's name because that's how it has to be. If you didn't want to help, you should have said so from the beginning." "I did want to help. I still want to help." "Then stop acting like we owe you something." The words hit me like a punch. "I never said you owe me. You didn't have to." She went back to cooking. "Look, Ronald, you can stay in the guest room for a few days, but then I think you should go back to Houston." "What? Why?" "Because this isn't working." "What isn't working?" "Us?" She didn't answer, just kept cooking. I stood there, feeling like the floor was falling out from under me. "Patricia, please, talk to me. There's nothing to talk about." I tried to touch her shoulder. She pulled away. "Don't." I moved into the guest room that day. It was on the 3rd floor, small, with a single bed and a window that looked out at the street. Marjorie and her kids were supposed to be staying there, but somehow they'd taken the master bedroom. "It's just temporary," Patricia said when I asked, "until we figure things out." I didn't know what things needed figuring out. I thought we'd figured everything out already. Every morning, I'd come downstairs, hoping things would be better. But every morning, the mood in the house got colder. June stopped talking to me entirely. He'd walk into a room, see me, and walk out. Erlinda was polite, but distant. "Good morning, Ronald." "Good morning." That was it. Marjorie avoided me completely. Her kids, too. They'd been so friendly during the party. Now they hid behind their mother when I walked by. And Patricia was always busy. Always somewhere else. I have to go to the market. I have to visit my friend. I have to help my mother with something. I tried to be useful. I bought groceries, fixed a leaking faucet, offered to drive Erlinda to church. "No, thank you," she said. "June will take me." One afternoon, I was sitting in the living room, watching TV I couldn't understand, when I heard voices in the kitchen. June and Marjorie. They were speaking Tagalog, but then June switched to English. "He actually thought we'd let him live here." They laughed. My blood went cold. "Stupid old man," June said. "Just kept giving money. Like an ATM." More laughter. I stood up, my legs shaking, walked to the kitchen. They stopped talking the second they saw me. "What did you just say?" June's face was blank. "Nothing. You called me a stupid old man." "I didn't say that." "I heard you." Marjorie looked away. June just stared at me. "You misunderstood. I heard you perfectly. Then maybe you shouldn't eavesdrop." My hands were shaking. "Where's Patricia?" "Out." "Where?" "I don't know." "Not here." I pulled out my phone, called her. She didn't answer. I called again. Finally, on the 5th try, she picked up. "What?" "Your brother just called me a stupid old man." Silence. "Patricia?" "You probably misheard." "I didn't mishear. He said it in English." June wouldn't say that. "He did say it. Marjorie was there. Ask her." I heard her sigh. "Ronald, you're being paranoid." "Paranoid?" I heard him. "Maybe you should go back to your apartment." My chest felt like it was being crushed. "What?" "You're making everyone uncomfortable." It's better if you stay somewhere else for a while. I'm making everyone uncomfortable? I built this house. You keep saying that. Like we forced you. You offered, Ronald. You said you wanted to help. I did want to help. I do want to help. But I didn't think I'd be treated like a stranger. You're not a stranger. You're just... Look, can we talk about this later? I'm busy right now. Busy with what? She hung up. I packed my things that night. Not much, just clothes and toiletries. June watched me from the doorway, didn't say a word, didn't help. When I walked down the stairs, Erlinda was in the kitchen. Goodbye, Erlinda, I said. She nodded. Goodbye, Ronald. That was it. No thank you, no apology. Just goodbye. I stood outside the house, looking up at the 3 stories, the marble floors visible through the windows, the air conditioning units humming. My house, that I'd never live in. I walked back to my apartment, set my bag on the floor, and sat on the edge of the bed, and I didn't move for hours. The next few days, I tried to visit, brought groceries, brought snacks for Marjorie's kids, brought flowers for Erlinda. Thank you, Ronald, Erlinda would say, taking the items, closing the door. I never got past the threshold. Patricia stopped answering my calls. I'd text her, "Can we talk?" Hours later, if I was lucky, she'd respond, "I'm busy. When can we talk?" I don't know. I started walking past the house at different times, hoping to see her, hoping she'd come out, smile, tell me this was all a misunderstanding. But she never did. One day, I saw her through the window, laughing with June and Marjorie, and my heart broke all over again. She looked happy, happier than she'd ever looked with me. I decided to try one more time. I went to the market, bought everything I could carry, fresh fish, vegetables, rice, fruit, snacks, soda, spent $300. My arms were aching by the time I got back to the house. I rang the doorbell. No answer. I knocked. Nothing. I tried the gate. Locked. New padlock. My stomach dropped. I called Patricia. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I called Erlinda, Marjorie, June. No one answered. Finally, after the 10th try, June picked up Patricia's phone. She doesn't want to talk to you. My heart was racing. What? Why? I just went to the market. You need to leave, Ronald. Leave? I brought food. For the family. We don't want your food. June, please. Let me talk to Patricia. She doesn't want to talk to you. Why not? There was a pause. Then he said, very calmly, "You're not family, Ronald. You never were. The house is ours. You need to move on." My legs felt weak. "Let me talk to her, please." He laughed. Not a friendly laugh. A cold one. "She's the one who told me to change the locks." The line went dead. I stood there, groceries in my hands, staring at the gate. Neighbors were watching from their windows. Some were standing in their yards, pretending not to look. I felt like a ghost, like I didn't exist. I set the groceries down by the gate and walked away. I didn't look back. That night, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I just sat in my apartment, staring at the wall, trying to understand. How did this happen? How did I go from building a future to being locked out of it? I pulled out my phone, looked at the photos, me and Patricia on the beach, me and Patricia at the construction site, me and Patricia on the day the house was finished. She was smiling in every single one. Was any of it real? Did she ever love me? Or was I just a wallet with legs? The next morning, I looked up lawyers in Bacolod, found one with good reviews. His office was small, cramped, filled with stacks of paper. "I need help," I told him. His name was Addy Cruz. He was maybe 50, with glasses and a tired smile. "Tell me what happened." I told him everything. The house, the money, the deed, the locks. He listened, taking notes. When I finished, he set down his pen. "The deed is in Erlinda's name?" "Yes, And you didn't sign any contracts? No. Patricia said it was better that way. Simpler. He nodded slowly. Mr. Ronald, in Philippine law, if the property is in her name and you have no written agreement, this is considered a gift. My chest tightened. But I have bank records, proof I paid for everything. That's good, but it doesn't change the fact that the property is legally hers. You can try to sue for reimbursement, but it will take years, and there's no guarantee you'll win. What about Patricia? Can I sue her for fraud? He sighed. You'd need to prove intent to deceive from the very beginning, that she entered the relationship with the sole purpose of taking your money. It's nearly impossible, Mr. Ronald. I felt like I was drowning. So there's nothing I can do? You can try, but I'll be honest with you. It's going to cost a lot of money and time, and the outcome is uncertain. I left his office feeling more hopeless than when I walked in. I contacted the U.S. Embassy in Manila. They were sympathetic but firm. This is a civil matter, sir. We can't intervene in property disputes. We recommend hiring a local lawyer. I did. He said I have no case. Then I'm sorry, but there's nothing we can do. I hung up, sat on the edge of my bed, looked at my phone. I pulled up Patricia's Facebook. She'd blocked me. I tried messaging her from a fake account. Patricia, please, just talk to me. I don't understand what happened. She read it, didn't reply. I tried again the next day. I'm not asking for the money back. I just want to understand. Read. No reply. I tried one more time. Did you ever love me? Read. No reply. 2 weeks later, I booked a flight back to Houston. I didn't tell anyone in the Philippines I was leaving. There was no one to tell. At the airport, I watched a young couple saying goodbye. They were crying, holding each other, promising to call every day. I used to be that man. Now I was I don't even know what I was, an old fool with an empty wallet. On the plane, I sat by the window, staring down as the Philippines disappeared below the clouds. I thought about the first time I'd flown here, how excited I'd been, how hopeful, how stupid. I thought about Patricia's smile, her laugh, the way she'd hold my hand and tell me I deserved to be happy. Was any of it real, or was I just a mark from the beginning? When I landed in Houston, the house felt colder than I remembered, emptier. My kids had left messages. Dad, call us. We haven't heard from you in weeks. I didn't call them back. What would I say? Hey kids. I just blew $500,000 on a woman who never loved me and a family that laughed at me behind my back. I couldn't. I went to my bank, pulled up my account. $430,000. Gone. I'd spent $430,000 in less than a year. On what? A house I'd never live in. A family that hated me. A woman who blocked my number. I sat at my kitchen table, looking at the printed photo I'd put on the fridge. Me and Patricia standing in front of a pile of dirt, smiling, believing. I took it down, crumpled it up, threw it away. That night, I lay in bed, in the same house where I'd lived with Sandra, where I'd raised my kids, where I'd spent 40 years of my life, and I cried. Not because I lost money, but because I lost myself. I'd given everything to feel wanted, to feel loved, to feel like I mattered. And in the end, I didn't matter at all. 6 months passed. I didn't date, didn't travel, barely left the house. My daughter came to visit. Dad, you need to talk to someone. I'm fine. You're not fine. You've lost weight. You look broken. I didn't argue. She made me an appointment with a therapist, Dr. Melanie. She was kind, patient. Tell me what brings you here, Ronald. I told her everything. She listened. Why do you think you gave so much? I didn't know how to answer. I wanted to be loved. She nodded. You wanted to be needed. I looked at her. What's the difference? Love is about connection. Being needed is about purpose. You were trying to buy purpose. She was right. I wasn't in love with Patricia. I was in love with the idea of being important again, of mattering, of being the hero in someone's story, even if that story was a lie. One day, I got a Facebook message from Marjorie. Ronald, I'm sorry for what happened. June and Patricia planned it from the start. I didn't know until it was too late. I feel terrible. I stared at the message for a long time, read it over and over. Then I closed the app. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Part of me wanted to be angry, wanted to rage, wanted to scream, but I was just tired. I thought about the house sometimes, wondered if Patricia walked through those rooms and ever thought about me. Probably not. I'd learned something painful but true. Some people see love as currency, and I was just a bank they could drain. I'm still here, still breathing, still healing. But I'll never be the same man who got off that plane in Bacolod. That man believed in second chances, believed in love, believed people were basically good. That man is gone, and maybe that's okay, because the man I am now knows better, knows the difference between generosity and self-destruction, knows that love shouldn't cost everything you have, knows that being alone isn't the worst thing in the world. Being used is worse. I checked Patricia's Facebook one last time, just to see. She was standing in front of the house I built, with her arm around a man, white, older, maybe 70. He had the same look in his eyes I used to have, that hopeful, desperate look, that I finally matter look, and I felt, I don't know, not jealousy, pity, because I knew exactly how his story would end. I closed the app, deleted my fake account. I won't check again. The house still stands in Bacolod, tall, white, beautiful, a monument to my foolishness, to my loneliness, to my desperate need to be wanted. But I'm still standing too, scarred, smaller, quieter, but standing. I built them a mansion. They kicked me out, but I'm the one who gets to walk away, and that's something they can never take from me. I'm 66 years old. I have maybe 20 good years left. I'm not going to spend them chasing ghosts. I'm not going to spend them trying to buy love from people who were never going to give it. I'm just going to live, quietly, carefully, alone, and that's enough. It has to be.